Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers, What We Should Know About the People We Don't Know is a thought-provoking exploration of how humans interact with strangers, how we judge them, and how often our assessments are inaccurate. The book examines the pitfalls and complexities of human communication and behavior, arguing that our assumptions and methods for understanding strangers often fail, leading to misunderstandings, misjudgments, and even tragic consequences. Gladwell weaves together stories, research, and case studies from a variety of fields to illustrate how our biases, cultural norms, and misunderstandings about human nature can lead us astray when interacting with people we don't know well. The book begins with an exploration of the infamous case of Sandra Bland, a woman who was pulled over by a Texas state trooper for a minor traffic violation and ended up dead in her jail cell 3 days later. Gladwell uses this case to illustrate the inherent dangers of miscommunication and misinterpretation when interacting with strangers. Bland's tragic death was, in part, a result of misunderstandings and misjudgments made by both her and the officer. Bland's behavior was misinterpreted as defiance, and the officer's actions escalated the situation unnecessarily. Gladwell argues that such situations are not uncommon and are often exacerbated by biases, cultural misunderstandings, and a lack of proper communication. One of the central themes of Talking to Strangers is the concept of default to truth. Gladwell argues that humans are hardwired to believe others, to trust the information they are given, and to assume that people are generally honest. This instinct, which is an essential part of human socialization, helps people navigate the world by allowing them to trust others and function in society without constantly being suspicious or cynical. However, Gladwell suggests that this instinct can lead us to make mistakes when interacting with strangers, as we often fail to question the truthfulness or intentions of others. In the case of the Sandra Bland incident, the officer's failure to question the situation critically and his assumptions about Bland's behavior contributed to the escalation of the encounter. Similarly, many cases of fraud or deception are rooted in people's tendency to default to truth, trusting what others say without questioning their motives. Gladwell contrasts this default to truth concept with the idea of mismatch, the phenomenon where people's behavior or communication styles don't align with the cultural or social expectations of those around them. This mismatch can lead to misinterpretation and misunderstanding, especially when someone from one background interacts with someone from another. For example, Gladwell explores how the behavior of Cuban immigrants in the 1950s was misjudged by American authorities who didn't understand the cultural norms that influenced their behavior. In Cuba, it was common for people to engage in loud, heated conversations as a sign of passion or intensity, but American officials interpreted this behavior as a sign of aggression or hostility, leading to a mismatch in understanding. A key part of Gladwell's argument is that people often fail to recognize the limits of their knowledge and the biases that influence their perceptions of others. He describes several examples where people made assumptions about others that were based on stereotypes, biases, or cultural misunderstandings, leading to poor decisions or negative outcomes. For instance, he recounts the story of the case of Jerry Sandusky, the former Penn State assistant football coach who was convicted of child molestation. Gladwell examines how people in positions of power failed to recognize the signs of Sandusky's behavior, partly because they defaulted to truth and did not question his outward persona as a respected coach. In this case, the failure to accurately read Sandusky as a predator was due to a combination of societal biases and the tendency to trust those who have power and status. Another significant theme in Talking to Strangers is the idea that human beings are often not as transparent as we think. We assume that people's behavior, facial expressions, and words will reveal their true intentions or feelings. However, Gladwell points out that human communication is far more complex and often ambiguous. People can lie, hide their emotions, or present false versions of themselves, and we are not always equipped to detect these discrepancies. Gladwell discusses the research of psychologists who have studied facial expressions and body language, showing how people often misread these cues, particularly when they are not trained to do so. He gives the example of people who are arrested for crimes they did not commit, in part because their nervousness or discomfort was misinterpreted as guilt. These situations arise because we overestimate our ability to read others accurately and fail to recognize the subtleties and complexities of human behavior. Gladwell also touches on the concept of transparency, which refers to the assumption that people's outward expressions and actions accurately reflect their inner thoughts and feelings. This belief, though intuitive, is deeply flawed. People are often good at concealing their true emotions or intentions, and what we see on the surface can be misleading. Gladwell explores various case studies, including the story of a man who was able to deceive people into believing he was a successful businessman by carefully crafting his appearance and persona. The lesson here is that humans are often poor at recognizing deception, and our reliance on transparency can lead us to make false assumptions about others. The book also delves into the concept of the illusion of transparency, the idea that people believe their emotions and thoughts are more transparent to others than they actually are. This is seen in situations where individuals believe their nervousness or anxiety is obvious to those around them, but in reality, these emotions are often invisible to others. Gladwell illustrates this concept with the story of the 2008 financial crisis, where many people in positions of power failed to see the impending collapse of the market because they could not perceive the true risks that were being hidden beneath the surface. Throughout Talking to Strangers, Gladwell examines the role of institutions and systems in shaping how we interact with others. He critiques the justice system, the police, and other societal structures for their failure to understand the complexity of human behavior and the dangers of making snap judgments. He emphasizes that these institutions often rely on standardized, one-size-fits-all approaches to dealing with people, which can be harmful when dealing with individuals who don't fit the mold. The book calls for a more nuanced approach to understanding strangers, one that acknowledges the limits of our knowledge and the biases that influence our perceptions. The book concludes with a powerful call for empathy and understanding when interacting with people we don't know. Gladwell urges readers to recognize the limitations of their assumptions, to question their biases, and to approach strangers with more care and curiosity. He suggests that by doing so, we can avoid the mistakes and misjudgments that so often arise in our interactions with others. Ultimately, Talking to Strangers is a critique of how society and individuals engage with the unknown and how our failure to understand the complexity of human behavior leads to negative consequences. Through a combination of storytelling, research, and analysis, Gladwell offers valuable insights into how we can better navigate the complex and often fraught terrain of human interactions. In conclusion, Talking to Strangers is an exploration of the biases, misunderstandings, and assumptions that shape our interactions with others. By examining various real-world examples, Gladwell sheds light on the dangers of miscommunication and misjudgment and calls for a more thoughtful, empathetic approach to understanding the people around us. Through his engaging storytelling and thought-provoking analysis, Gladwell invites readers to reconsider how they perceive and interact with strangers, offering a valuable perspective on the complexity of human relationships.